Are you a healthcare professional looking for a trusted concussion resource? Then you've come to the right place. From her New York City studios, welcome to Concussion Corner with your host, Dr. Jessica Schwartz.
Welcome to the Concussion Corner Podcast. My name is Dr. Jessica Schwartz, and I'm so thrilled to have Dr. José Posas back with us today. In part 2 of this episode series, we cover what do sex, sport, and dysautonomia have in common? More than you think, actually, especially in our concussion patients. In part 2 of our conversation, I sit down with Dr. Posas to unpack the intersection of intimacy and concussion. We explore how brain injury can affect hormonal health, libido, and autonomic functioning, and why these topics must be addressed with both curiosity and compassion in the clinic. This is for every clinician who's ready to make space for the real human experience of recovery and every patient who's ever felt unseen. It's time to talk about what really happens behind closed doors and inside that nervous system of ours that makes us so human after concussion. With that being said, welcome to our Teach One, Serve Many community. Let's now welcome Dr. Posas. Take care. Dr. Posas, welcome back to Concussion Corner Podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. Really great to be back.
Well, part 1, we talked about sport neurology, some social determinants of health and DEI and how it pertains to concussion. I'd love to kind of switch over and let's talk about sport and let's talk about sex and exercise and intimacy and concussion. I haven't seen it done and I'm so excited to explore this avenue with you so we can really get the message out. We're all about making the complex uncomplicated and also making sure that we instill in our healthcare professionals that we train and educate all over the world that being comfortable with the uncomfortable, because I can guarantee you that the patient across from you that has erectile dysfunction or menstrual issues is way more uncomfortable than any of us could be. So I'm so stoked to be able to explore this topic with you.
Yeah, no, let's dive right in. I mean, I think the big thing, let me start with how I sort of learned about this, right? So when I was in fellowship, we'd give the sort of discussion about what you're still recovering from concussion. You shouldn't just go right back out on the playing field. It has to be a progression of return to physical activity, and we have to return to the classroom. So we know about return to learn, return to play. What no one really talks about, but I think is something that should be talked about, is return to intimacy, right? I mean, I think that's part of it. It is part of being human. What I've told the collegiate athletes, I've said, part of return to physical activity is if you get a headache before you're done 30 minutes of just casual light walking around campus, then you probably should watch out about sexual encounters. And if you think about a progressive return, we talk about solo intimacy versus partnered intimacy, and then we think about some of the logistics about if there is oral contact or penetrative contact, we have to think about positions, and we have to think about, for example, if somebody has whiplash, if somebody was a soccer player and they went up for a ball and they fell on the back of their head, somebody took their legs out from under them and hit the back of their head and their neck is really painful. If they're in a position which hyperextends their neck, addressing their partner, then that's going to be difficult for them. That's going to give them pause. That's going to have them have a difficult time. The other thing that's super important to talk about in intimate settings is the nervous system does have sort of 2 phases. In medical school, we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. Other way people may have heard of this is the rest and digest sympathetic nervous system, or it's the opposite of fight or flight. So that PNS, parasympathetic nervous system, rises as we're sort of initiating things like foreplay and getting the brain and getting the body together, right? The brain and the genitals. And then in terms of the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight response, that is actually the part of the nervous system that is more prevalent with regards to climax. So you need both sides. You need the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system to activate brain-body connection to really have a full sort of intimate encounter from a physiologic standpoint. Obviously, this is not talking about the complexity of spirituality, emotion, et cetera, that other people may experience, but just in terms of a return to play and a return to physical intimacy. If someone is having a headache, for example, at climax, the example I will give them is spend more time in foreplay before you get to climax. Don't just try to run to the end zone. Take your time, enjoy the journey.
Indeed. And I just think it's such an important conversation to have, because at the end of the day, I have exercise science training by my background and bachelor's degree, just thinking about it physiologically. When we Valsalva, interthoracic pressures go up, intracranial pressures go up, and folks that are having potentially physiologic response to concussion or other things going on, that will, or if they're having a dysautonomia that's either diagnosed or undiagnosed, they may be unaware of all the above. So it's so important to connect to the patient's subjective, which I find all the time being mismanaged by untrained folks in the concussion space, When we put someone, from a physical therapy standpoint, in a bird dog position, in quadruped, check their heart rate, do their vitals. We want to make sure that we're training for this in the clinic. That's functional, whether they're playing with their grandkids or whether it's a sexual position that they are experiencing with their partner or loved one in a safe space. And then just simply going into quadruped can completely freak someone's heart rate out. So we want to make sure that we're validating the patient's symptom experience and that they're not going crazy. And then how can we have these conversations in a safe space of like, hey, how do we progress this? So we work from a physical therapy standpoint. We'll put them prone on elbows, making sure that they can achieve some cervical extension while they're in, that upper cervical spine area, can kind of take that movement. Then we put them into quadruped. Then we change neck positions. Then we change their heart rate. Can they track with their ocular motor system and vestibular system and do some saccadic training, and so on and so forth, do some head shakes, and that's what that looks like in terms of a rehabilitative standpoint, 101.
But I'd say too, just from a physiologic standpoint,
Yep.
The amount of vascular return that you have in your legs alone. So if somebody's laying flat on their back and the legs go up in the air and that overwhelms their dysautonomia that has been underdiagnosed or undiagnosed, that will cause somebody to black out, get dizzy, freak out in an otherwise, supposed to be enjoyable setting, right? So this is something that can also alienate them within their close relationships. And that is difficult because that adds more to the emotional side of feeling not themselves.
Right. And alienation and solitude is one of the big things with brain injury. It's an invisible injury and people really pull back. Any advice or any common things that you've given to your patients to talk about with their partner, or maybe bringing their partner in to an appointment about like, hey, just any advice there, from intimacy and concussion from a
Yeah, typically I ask if somebody has a stable long-time partner and there is a question of that on our first visit, I'll say, bring them the next time and let's have discussions. Like, I'm a healthcare professional. It is awkward and uncomfortable, but at the same time, we're all adults, right? And for those who are in their teenage years, I try to sort of avoid uncomfortable conversations in front of parents or each other. But sometimes I'll just ask, are you sexually active? And if they roll their eyes or say, oh, don't talk about it, Mom, I don't want to hear it, or whatever, then I sort of shy away from that. But it is something that I sort of will then sort of throw the comment of sexual activity is physical activity. Okay, moving on. And then we talk about the return to play and stuff like that.
Now, a word from our sponsor. Did you know that sport helmets are rated on a 5-star system similar to cars? And the safest helmets have nothing to do with price, brand, or availability? Since 2011, Virginia Tech researchers have been providing unbiased helmet ratings that allow consumers to make informed decisions when purchasing helmets. The helmet ratings are the culmination of over a decade of research identifying which helmets best reduce concussion risk. This work is done as part of Virginia Tech's service mission and is 100% independent of any funding or influence from helmet manufacturers. Our mission at Concussion Corner is to expose you, the listener, to trusted spaces in the concussion arena that translate to clinic next day. Please visit the Virginia Tech Helmet Lab website in our show notes or at bit.ly/Virginia Tech Helmets and spread the word to aid in lowering concussion risk in your community. Thank you for tuning in, and let's begin the show.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to one of the old TBI papers, and I can't think of who it is right now, but 33% of male traumatic brain injury patients that were veterans, had erectile dysfunction. How are you broaching those conversations with your assigned male at birth patients, that are maybe in their teenage or young years, or even your assigned female at birth patients that may have a menstrual cycle and may be missing menstrual cycles, but no one's screened for that post-concussion or TBI. How are you handling those conversations in clinic?
Yeah, I could probably be better about that, frankly. But I think having discussions about, are you having changes in hormone? I sort of vaguely say, are there hormonal changes that are going on, right? And there's a case that in my mind is totally cemented in terms of having someone who was a athlete who was injured riding a horse and then had significant hirsutism, and then he had lactation and gynecomastia. He grew breasts, and that was an obvious sort of like, oh my gosh, this guy has a pituitary issue. And then the converse is the female patients, assigned female at birth patients, who will come to me and say, oh, my cycle is completely out of whack and my headaches are going crazy because of that. And I say, well, we need to partner, we need to circle the wagons and talk with your OBGYN and figure out, is there a hormonal pattern that needs to be sent for you that will be very helpful in terms of trying to help you regulate that? Because that is something that I don't do. But sometimes on the converse side, if I'll have some gentleman who's in their season who has had a concussion and they're complaining about erectile dysfunction or lack of libido and things like that, and they're assigned they're like, my testosterone that my male health physician has prescribed me is not helping anymore. Just parenthetically, prescribed testosterone for a male who has erectile dysfunction is gender-affirming care. Let's call a spade. B, let's make sure to have a discussion about what is your physical activity level, because libido is definitely tied to level of athleticism. So as we've discussed, right, if you're a male in your 50s and you're assigned testosterone by your male health physician, that is gender-affirming care, A, but also let's have a discussion about what is your physical activity, because there is a direct connection between libido and physical activity. If your level of physical activity is not matching what it was prior to your injury, then your libido won't match that, right? The two are connected. We've already discussed in this podcast about how the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems are tied together. If that's all disconnected and knocked out because of a concussion, then there's lots of echoing symptoms that will fall in someone's life.
Fantastic. I'm so happy that we were able to have these conversations, get them out into public, hopefully spark some, just electrical activity between people's ears to say, you know what, maybe I'm not screening for this in clinic. Maybe I'm missing this objective about somebody unable to be able to bend over or do the dishwasher or having high heart rates in certain positions. And then maybe extend that question to talk about intimacy and concussion. So I just thank you so much for coming on. As we wrap up here, anything that you want to see in the next 5 years, Dr. Posas, either for sport neurology or reaching across the aisle for concussion care, for really delivering that compassionate concussion care that's comprehensive. What are you hoping to see before we head out?
Yeah, great. In my wildest dreams, right? If I could get, one of the digital monitor wearable technologies, if I could get a log of that was somehow filtered through AI that could tell me, is someone as active pre and post injury, and how are they active? Where are they struggling? If I could look at heart rate variability, VO2, if I could look at blood pressure, if I could look at hours of sleep at night, and if I could get that in a collated sort of dashboard for me, wow. I mean, that would be tremendous. But that's just the video game nerd in me thinking about that.
Fantastic. I could talk to you all day. I hope to have you on back again. I know we're going to have so many questions coming in. And again, thank you so much for serving your community. Thank you so much for being a part of our Teach One, Serve Many community over at the Academy side of things. For folks that want to meet you, it'll be for fall 2025. They can sign up anytime, any day. We're so happy to be able to do that rolling admissions. And again, thank you again for just really being, someone that I can look up to, someone that we can really have these intense conversations and still, end, with having a cup of coffee or having an adult beverage after as well. So just thank you again for all that you do for our community.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks so much for having me.
Take care. That wraps up part 2 of our incredible conversation with Dr. José Posas, where we tackle the often overlooked yet deeply human side of concussion recovery, intimacy, hormonal health, dysautonomia, and how they intersect with neurological care. We are so fortunate to have Dr. José Posas on faculty at Concussion Corner Academy, where he helps guide our global community of clinicians through these complex conversations with clarity and compassion. If you'd like to connect with Dr. José Posas directly, you can meet him during our fall 2025 course, Concussion: The Patient Rehabilitation Journey, Part 2. We have rolling admissions now, so you can sign up any day and any time. You'll have 14 weeks to complete 12, and you can then come into our live sessions with our faculty in the fall after you've already implemented what you can in the clinic for next day knowledge translation, and also have one-on-one office hours weekly with myself. We're so happy to have you join our Teach One, Serve Many community. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to our new YouTube channel, where we're doing everything video as well, if you're listening to this on our audio side of things. And as always, thank you for being a part of our Teach One, Serve Many community. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Concussion Corner, hosted by Dr. Jessica Schwartz. The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and not to be used as personal medical advice. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Concussion Corner.